Today we're back in North Huntington, Irwin, Pennsylvania, and we're going to show you how to do just a simple DIY shed. This project is so easy, anybody can do it. Today we're going to run you through the process of how we build it from start to finish. It's a very simple application. There was minimal digging, no footers, nothing in ground, and the structure itself is a floating structure, so it can be moved at any time. Instead of using footers, because we want to have the ability to kind of move the shed around, we used a block called a camo block. You could get it at Home Depot. Lowe's might carry it as well. But it's just another way to actually set your 6x6 post. This area in particular had an older shed. It was probably 30 years old. The ground itself was very eroded. It wasn't level. So we actually, instead of bringing a machine back here, which we have limited access here, we actually can't get a machine back here anymore because of the way the backyard is built in. We had to take a different approach here. So we used some of the applications of how to build a deck to build this shed. Again, starting with the camo block, no footer. So we found our elevations here. We used the camo block, set our 6x6s, and then we set the frame perimeter. We didn't put the floor joists in yet, but we just set the frame perimeter. We set the camo blocks to the elevation we needed, and then we raised the perimeter frame up and down so we could get our level all the way around. As you can see in this particular application, this is basically touching the ground, and then we have about a 6-inch drop in the back. So using the camo blocks makes it really, really easy to accomplish a level platform to build the shed on top of. I want to reiterate the fact that when we built this structure, to get this thing set up and to make it easy, we set this perimeter, this, all the way around before any of these floor joists here were installed. We used the outside perimeter to get this thing to elevation and where we need it. Not only that, probably one of the most important parts besides getting this thing level is you have to make sure that this thing is square. So in order to do that, connect onto one corner, measure to this corner. So we're 226 1/4. And then you'll simply just take the tape to that end. I would go over there and make sure it's 226 1/4. And then you know the structure is exactly square. It's very important as you start building the walls and the roof that the structure is square from the start. If not, you're gonna chase your mistake all the way up to the roof. The lumber that we chose for this particular project, this shed is actually 10 foot wide, 16 foot long. So we have approximately a 10 foot, maybe a little bit under gap. We had to make sure that the lumber that we're using can accommodate the span. So a 2x8 treated lumber is sufficient for this particular application. As we set our posts, we have a corner post, we have an 8-foot post, and then an end post. So we put that post in the middle. That double beam here, these are doubled to be able to take the weight of the floor joist in the center. We stepped it up a little bit, and we actually put these 2x8s on a 12-inch center mark. So essentially, if you pull from this end, every 12 inches, we have a joist. I don't like the idea of going 16-inch on center here just because of the flex. We wanted to make sure that the structure was really, really strong. We temporarily tacked these 2x8s, so prior to bringing these in here, it's the exact same measurement from here all the way down. So we pre-cut everything before we brought it into the actual outside frame. So then we used the Milwaukee nail gun. We prefer Milwaukee tools. We've been using them for a lot of years. They hold up to what we do, and we use them on a day-to-day basis. The nails that you need to use for this are very, very particular. They're a galvanized nail. They are rated to be outside in the wet and the weather, and also in a treated lumber. The other very important part that we use here to hold the frame up on the 6x6 post, it's a through lock. This one is actually a 9.5-inch through lock, and I'm gonna show you over here how we apply that and attach to the 6x6 post. So here's the 9.5-inch through lock. This is equivalent to a 1/2-inch carriage bolt. It's just a faster, quicker way to do this. And they are fantastic because of the way they lock together. Once the lag goes through, there's actually a screw-on piece on the other side. And as you tighten that down for the finish, to get that finished tighten point in the lag, it really locks the post to the frame itself. And I'll show you here. As it comes through, with the cap, and then it finishes. One of the last pieces of the puzzle here for the 2x8 frame that we have, one of the most important parts, obviously, for longevity purposes and just for the building purposes. We have a 2x6, 2x8 joist hanger on here. We like to use the appropriate joist hanger screws. Feel it's a little bit easier, but on the sides, we'll apply a 10D joist hanger nail. So from here, once we have the structure secured and we have all the joist hangers on, we'll go through and make sure and check that everything is straight, make sure everything is square, do a once over, make sure we like where the platform's actually sitting, make sure everything's level. And then from there, our next step is to install the 3/4 inch treated plywood. We will shoot that down again with the Milwaukee nailer with the galvanized exterior nails. And we will also put adhesive down just for kind of a added connection point to make sure this thing's sturdy and doesn't move. Okay, we made some progress. We got the floor framing done. Obviously, you can see we got a little bit more done than the floor framing. But the next step in the process was adding in the 3/4 inch treated plywood. When you do that, we started on the left side of the structure. We started with 2 full 8-foot pieces. The shed length is 16 foot. So again, we made sure when we laid the plywood, as you can see the chalk lines coming across here, that's for each one of our floor joists that was set at 12 inch on center. You make sure the plywood hits obviously center of a floor joist, and then you can lay your next row. This one again was an easy application because it was 16 foot long and we could use 2 8-foot pieces of plywood. The next row we're gonna start with staggering the sheath. So in this application, we started with a 4-foot piece, and then we went with an 8-foot piece, and then ended with a 4-foot piece. And then the final row, we went back to 2 8-foot long pieces, it only being 10 foot wide. We had a 2-foot rip of the flooring pieces coming across. Obviously, the next step in the process is to frame the walls. The customer wants to use a hardy board application siding on the outside of this, so we couldn't just use a standard frame wall and then use maybe a shed T111 or some type of LP siding on the outside for the finish application. In this particular install, we had to do 2x4 walls, and then we did a 7/16 OSB on the outside. To frame the walls is very simple. You take 2 16-foot plates. So you take a bottom plate, and then you take a top plate, and you lay them next to each other, and then you're gonna do your layout coming across here. And this wall is actually 16 inch on center. So you're gonna start from one side, and you're gonna pull on your tape 16 inch centers all the way across. Make sure when you do that, when you hit 16 inch, when you pull across, you want to go back 3/4 and forward 3/4. And the reason why you do that on the wall is so when you set your first piece of plywood, it'll hit dead center of the stud, and then you can move forward accordingly. You can also see that we have 2 top plates up there. That's gonna add rigidity to the wall once the roof load is on there. And any framing application that we do, we always put a double top plate, and it's code. So this shed, he wanted to have a very wide opening. Usually we'll go about 6, maybe 7 foot. This one's actually gonna be 8 foot. So we're gonna have 2 4-foot doors that will open up outwards. He's gonna be putting quads and dirt bikes back here. And then same thing in the front, we have 2 4-foot wide doors and 8-foot total opening. That's why you can see we had to build a little bit of a beam here. There's nothing bearing down on that. I just wanted to make sure that it was rigid and that we didn't have any type of flex or movement there. All the door weight and all the attachments gonna be over on these wing walls here. We have a truss up there that we actually fabricated, and we'll get to that next. We used a double 2x6 with a flitch plate in between here, plywood flitch plate. Kind of makes it really tough. So essentially, when you're building that beam, you're taking a 2x6 and then a 1/2 inch piece of plywood and another 2x6, and you attach them all together. That's going to give you a total width of approximately 3.5 inches. Will then be the same size as your wall plate. So this is the exterior, obviously, of the shed. Again, we had to use 7/16 OSB out here because we are doing a hardy board installation here. Obviously, plywood's covered up, but there is a stud every 16 inches. And again, make sure when you're attaching the plywood, you're gonna go every 6 to 8 inches. So once you get all of your plywood attached, we come across with, we just use the Everbuilt house wrap, kind of creates a barrier in between. If anything gets behind the siding, water will run out and kind of protects the framing behind the wall. For the roofing application, for the frame itself, for the trusses, we actually framed them and built them ourselves. And so essentially, as you can see here, we have a bottom cord, which is just a 2x4. We have our center post, and then we have 2 more 2x4s here, kind of creating the slope. Now, when we built these roof trusses, we sent them to a 412 pitch. We have a 10-foot wide building, So essentially, the way it worked out for us, every 1 foot is 4 inches of slope. We started with obviously getting our bottom cord to length, so approximately 10 foot, and then we find out what our angle is, laying this all on the ground and kind of laying it out. The way we did it here, if you look down at the ground, there's some faint chalk lines. Before these walls were built, we used the structure itself to build these roof trusses before any of this was in the way. We know that this is straight. We know that these walls are straight because we built the foundation. So we laid the bottom cord on the edge here, and then we put our angled roof slope here, and then we just kind of traced and marked everything. And to put these together, if you want to step on the other side here, you can see we used a plate here, obviously here, and then on the end. And we actually glue those, and then we use a 1.5 inch joist hanger nail, which is a structural screw, as you can see here, that's going to hold all of that together. Building your own trusses, as long as you're doing it right and you know what you need to do and the size of wood and span, something like this is very simple. It can be done within a few hours, and then you have your own roof truss. The homeowner actually wanted an overhang on this shed application. A lot of times with sheds, you don't see overhangs. You'll just see essentially a piece of trim board over top of the wall and then siding down. So we did about a 7.5 inch overhang. We beefed up the fascia board to make it a little bit more presentable, a little bit wider as opposed to using a 2x4. And then essentially from here, your soffit's just gonna come straight in. So again, it gives it dimension, and we're not done with the outside front here. So that's gonna get plywood, and then there's gonna be an overhang to kind of match perimeter all the way around. So the next phase of the project was to put 7/16 inch plywood on the roof trusses that we built. So the roof trusses, again, are laid out at 2 foot on center. We have to put in, if you take a look here, we have to put roof clips in to kind of make up for the support of the size of the plywood we made. And then from there, we have a synthetic underlayment over top of the plywood, and then we used Owens Corning dimensional shingle to cap it off. We put a few outlets in here. We put one outlet lower right-hand side when you come in, and then we put another outlet lower left-hand side. And then we also have an exterior outlet on the back right corner for any exterior projects that he may want to plug into or do. We also put in a switch here, and then we put just a small LED light to give some light here, obviously, if he's in here when it's dark or whatever. Customer already had power ran down here from a previous build that they had. They also have a pool and a pool house out there. So it was easy for us to attach into the power system. So we brought our wire in here, and then we ran it over to our outlet. And then we went from there to the other outlet, and then over, using all 12-2 wire. So he doesn't plan on running anything big in here or substantial, but he'll be able to run what he needs, small power tools and things of that nature. So to build these doors, we decided to use a 2x4 frame. As you can see, we have a top, middle, and bottom part to the door, and to attach the door, we used a GRK 3/8 inch lag screw that's about 3 inches long, and we pre-drill all of our holes just because these lags are rather aggressive, and if you don't give a little bit of room, a lot of times it'll split the wood, and then obviously split coming in. So you get a better connection. The frame stays solid. When we built the frame, we laid it down on horses, and then we decided, again, we used hardy board and siding for this application. So for the doors itself, we laid the wooden frame down, and then we lay the piece of hardy siding on the door frame, making sure it's square and exactly where we need it. So when we frame the doors, we'll put the frame together, and we'll actually set the doors in the opening to make sure we can get them exactly where we want them and make sure that our gaps are exactly precise to the opening. So once we attach the hardy siding, which is used with an exterior galvanized nail, siding gun nail, and then we go over it with, this is LP trim. And you'll see a top and bottom block here. Reason for that, when we shut the door, you'll see where the hinges are. So you wanna make sure that every hole that you have in these hinges, these doors specifically, they're very heavy. Obviously with hardy board on there, it's concrete board. So you gotta make sure that all of your screws are getting solid connection, so it eliminates the sag and the movement of the door. Also, when we built these wing walls, we had to make sure that they're very secure and very solid. Again, this is a heavy door. It's 4 foot wide, a little over 7 feet tall. So it definitely has some weight to it, and you wanna make sure that this frame stays, because if you don't, these doors constantly opening and closing will move the frame and kind of start tearing it apart. So because these doors are so heavy, we had to use some heavy duty hinges, as you can see here. little bit more of a heavy duty latch as well. You have the ability to lock this if you want. And then just to kind of keep the doors in shape and in place, we have 2 barrel bolts up here that kind of secure the doors. One thing we are going to do, and we haven't shown that yet, but in the inside, we're probably going to do another pin of some sort, and then also probably put a piece of wood on the back side of this opening so we can close all the air gaps, just in case of snow or wind and ice coming through there. One of the things that we did here, because I know on my shed at my house, a lot of times pulling things in and out of here, this part gets damaged. So when you use traditional trim or siding down here, a lot of times it gets pretty beat up. So what we did was just use a piece of composite deck board, screwed it in every about 2 foot, kind of gives it a little bit more rigidity down there, and should last a lot longer. So again, for this application, we used James Hardie 4x8 sheets of concrete board. Very solid product. But again, one of the things you have to make sure you have your frame walls set right. They have to be every 16 inch on center. And then over top of that, we have 7/16 OSB plywood and then house wrap over that plywood. That's following the proper application steps to be able to put James Hardie on. Same thing that we use for the doors, we use an LP trim here. A lot of times we use Hardie, sometimes we'll use LP, depending on the application and maybe what the customer wants. Looking up here, we used Ventura hidden vented soffit, pebblestone clay, and then we just use a simple aluminum bend, aluminum fascia to cap that off. And then above that, obviously within the roof, is going to be pebblestone clay drip edge. This isn't a typical build for us, but we are able to build and do anything. We have 2 companies, the Construction Company Incorporated, and then also our roofing and siding company called the Roofing Company LLC. If you have any questions about this build, please just leave a comment. Reach out to us. We'll help with anything that we can. Please subscribe. We have a lot more videos coming now and soon. We'd like you guys to check them out.